Hello, this is Kay from KCM with J from KCM, my wife, who came after all the letters. It's like KCM J, but that's too many letters, so we're not doing that. Anyway, so I asked her to join me because it's a Saturday night, and what else were we doing? We are here to talk about the next KCM tasting. For anybody who doesn't know, my wife is actually a big part of the KCM brand experience. She sometimes helps with tastings in terms of actually conducting them, and she helps me not spend too much money when we're out buying whiskeys. So this is actually our next tasting that's coming up. I don't have the date scheduled yet, but we're looking at March, and the theme of the tasting is around independent bottlers. So what do we know about independent bottlers?
Tell them what an independent bottler is, honey.
Why don't you tell them? An independent bottler is somebody who buys a cask of whiskey but has not made that cask of whiskey themselves and then sells it under their brand. So here's an example of a whiskey distillery, Imperial, which actually at this point is shut down, but it's bottled by Signatory, which is probably, at least in our area, one of the most prolific independent bottlers. So Signatory bought this cask of whiskey and let it sit for 15 years. They bought it from Imperial and then bottled it under their name. What you'll normally see with independent bottlers is that they'll put their name, Signatory, and then they'll put the name of the distillery, Imperial, and then all the details.
So what are some other popular independent bottlers that people might see when they're going out to the store and buying them?
Great question. Some of them, well, actually, a lot of the ones we have here aren't as popular, so I'll talk about the ones that you'll most generally see. Cadenhead is a really big independent bottler who's based in both Glasgow and Edinburgh. You can find them in, well, actually, are they in Glasgow or are they in Campbelltown? I gotta check my facts now.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, we're not.
All right, just continue.
We're not gonna cut that out. This is live reel every time. So anyway, they have multiple locations and they do a lot of different bottlings. Gordon and MacPhail is another one that you'll see a lot of. Signatory obviously is one that we see quite a bit around the area. We have actually quite a few independent bottlers here, and I don't think, actually Chieftains is probably one that's a little more prolific. You'll see Chieftains decently often. Can't think of any that, there are a few that I'm forgetting that are pretty common to see, but...
Compass Box.
Compass Box is not an independent bottler. They are a blender. Because they don't... So the difference between Compass Box, this is a good point to bring up.
Yeah, we're going to learn together.
Yes, we are. The difference between Compass Box and somebody like Signatory is that Compass Box buys single malts and blends them under their own name. But they don't disclose what those single malts are. So they're providing a different service. They're more like a Johnny Walker. So they have a brand.
They don't tell you who the distillery is.
Correct.
Okay.
So, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk through all the whiskeys we have for the next tasting. My beautiful wife here was a large proponent of finding some of these whiskeys while she was traveling. It's one of the glories of being a professional traveler, right?
Yes, it is. It was pretty cool. I got to go to a really big, humongous warehouse that had thousands of varieties of whiskeys from all different countries. And they had a lot of different options that aren't available here in Michigan, so it was cool to be able to bring those back for this tasting.
And we find that there's a lot of stuff that's not available in Michigan quite often, don't we? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pour some Imperial, because we'll use this as maybe our pseudo review of Imperial to kind of show what you can get out of independent bottlings while talking about some of the other stuff that we have going on. So We're gonna dual path this. It's parallel parking.
All right.
Okay, so honest feedback. So just a little bit on Imperial. We've talked about it. I think it's been mentioned in past videos, but I'm going to give you some details on it so that as we're gushing over it, we can talk in more detail. Obviously, Imperial, as I've said, is a distillery that's now shut down. So you can probably see by the bottle, but there's not much left. So it ends up being a very bittersweet experience every time you finish a bottle because, you know, letting it sit around this empty, it can tend to oxidize a little faster and not retain its flavor. This bottle I've had for just about 5 years, so it's about time to let it go, even if we don't want it to. I'm gonna pour some, don't worry. You're not the only one drinking this today. It was distilled in 1995. One thing about independent bottlers is they do a fantastic job of giving you all sorts of details, more details than you'll typically see from your standard offerings or your original bottlings. It's 15 years old, as I said. It was bottled on 10/08/2011. It was matured in hogshead. So
I used to think that hogshead was like a hogshead. It's not. It's actually a type of barrel for anybody that doesn't know.
So they didn't put this whiskey in the
brain of a
yeah,
pan.
right. Yeah. So, well, there you go. R.I.P. Imperial. If you see a bottle or a bottle of Imperial out there, I would recommend trying it because, for what it's worth, Imperial isn't too fashionable and too sought after, so you can still probably get them for a decent price. But we'll talk a little bit about what this experience is like and kind of give you an idea of how it tastes. It's 46% natural color and non-chill filtered. Another beauty of independent bottlers is they're typically not targeting the casual drinker, so you more often get higher proof offerings and natural color and non-chill filtration, which is what we like as whiskey drinkers. So, yeah, and then they give you some cask and bottle information that most people don't care about and will never use. But if you really like it, you know, you can go back and try and find another bottle from that cask. So, first off, what are your thoughts? Oh, Plancha, what are your thoughts on this whiskey?
I feel like I can tell a little bit that it has oxidized slightly in the arrival, but it's still a really pleasant whiskey, and it has a lot of flavor in the finish. This is a really, really great, strong finishing whiskey.
So I agree. I think you'll see that the arrival's a little light, and it kind of, you describe it as maybe hollow, right? There's a lot of surface level flavor, but it doesn't last. But then as it goes into the body, you get all of that complexity starting to come in, and then comes through the finish. And really, what I really love about this whiskey is we have a cat who's vandalizing our furniture.
She's kind of an attention seeker, so all of the singing videos that I post, because I have a separate YouTube channel, she always video bombs me.
So for my 3 subscribers, do you want to plug your music thing right now? Maybe you'll get 3 more subscribers.
If I don't, I'm gonna be pissed.
Go ahead.
No.
Go ahead. You already mentioned it. What is your singing thing?
I have a YouTube under Joanna Lawrence Sings, and if you want to check me out, that would be great.
There you go. You'll like them more than the whiskey videos. What I find about Imperial, at least this 15-year, it's very tropical. It reminds me a lot of Old Pulteney. It's got that kind of briny but citrusy and fruity.
Of citrus. I can see that. Like bananas,
flavor.
melon.
Yep, and it's well-rounded and complex. It has a good, healthy amount of maltiness to it.
Like if I were to compare it to Old Pulteney, I'd say that Old Pulteney is like like you're on a ship. It has a lot of brine
Yeah.
to it, and then this is like if you're on a tropical island.
Yeah. Really,
And it's
this
just very bright and.
this is a
fruity.
fantastic whiskey, and I'm sad to see it go, honestly. But again, at some point you have to tip your hat to a bottle and move on. So on to the tasting that we're going to be doing, because I think one of the exciting things about independent bottlings when you buy them is you kind of don't know what you're going to get. You get gems like this where, I mean,
It's phenomenal.
this is a whiskey you could drink all the time. It's light and refreshing, but complex and deep, and it's sometimes hard to find that in a whiskey. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would say so.
I mean, you've tried just about everything that we have, and
I'd say
to
that
try
this is
and
in my
think-
top 5.
yeah, to try and think of something that kind of does what this whiskey does is difficult.
Mm-hmm. This one is very unique.
Yes, so that's one of the advantages of doing independent bottlings, but one of the disadvantages is that sometimes it doesn't turn out so well.
Yeah, I mean, we had one in here that is a very unique whiskey. I think that some people would probably definitely have a taste for it. I personally don't. But then we tried another independent bottle that Kyle actually had never heard before, and it was one that I had brought back from California. And it's really, really good. So,
For sure. So
some of them can be a little more unique.
let's talk about them. We'll talk about the tasting. So again, I'm targeting this tasting in March. So if you're in the Southwest Michigan area and you're interested, you can let us know.
All are welcome.
We'll start in order because we're going to go through and we're going to do all these. This is a whiskey blender slash distiller, which I don't think they're really a distiller, but they call themselves distiller and blender. Fairly new, 1992, Mossburn. So this name hasn't been around our parts a whole lot here in Michigan, but it came up just about a year ago. This is actually a bottle of Chiananik. So Chiananik is a Speyside distillery, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's it was one or two, and I had
He's not a credible source. Just shut down the video.
Oh yeah, forget it. It's done. I had to guess
Down
one of
to
two.
2
and it was
subscribers,
wrong.
you lost that one.
Anyway, so this is Chiananik. It's a Highland distillery. That's right, because it tastes like a Speyside to me, but okay. That's a weak recovery, isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah.
He's like, oh, where's the straw? I can grab it.
Anyway, so Chiananik, it's a 10-year-old whiskey. It's cask strength. So Mossburn has a line of whiskeys that you can buy. Some of them are cask strength. Some of them are bottled at 46%. So far as I've seen, most of the ones that I'm aware of are independent bottling. So they're bottling under the Mossburn name, but they're by other distilleries. So Chiananik here. It was distilled in 2007 and then bottled in 2017. It's 59.1%. We've had, as you can see, we've had a little bit of time to get to know this whiskey. I think we can say it's a pretty solid whiskey, right? Ultimately, so it'll have some interesting things to offer to the tasting, and it is kind of a lighter whiskey even for a Highland. So that is, I think it's going to offer a good starting point. And then, since I clearly don't know what I'm talking about, do you want to talk a little bit about this one? It's a
Sure.
Speyside. It's just all letters,
Are we
capital.
sure it's the Speyside? So this is a whiskey that I brought back from California, and I brought it back because it was a distiller that Kyle had never heard of before, and I thought that was really intriguing since he's kind of the whiskey master of the household. So
Two of us live here, unless the dogs. You consider the dogs; they are not whiskey masters.
they also count though, so he is above that. So it puts his ranking up pretty high. So this is the Jewel of Scotland, and as he said, it's a Speyside. It's Akrosk Distillery. Is that how you say it?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to default to Ralphie for this one. I would guess it's Okroysk.
Akroysk. But it's a cask strength whiskey. So it's at a really high alcohol by volume percentage, 56.8. So I think this is the only one that we have that's cask strength.
Negative.
Do we have one other one?
This is cask strength, this is cask strength, and this is cask strength. So actually, you
Okay.
are exactly opposite. We have one
We
non-cask
have
strength
zero
whiskey.
credit, down to one subscriber.
Yes.
Somebody else is like, I'm not taking this crap anymore. All this false information.
Fake news. 2020. KCM 2020.
Yeah, you could be running mate.
Yeah, there we go.
This is my VP, Kyle Crowe.
Oh, thanks. Just
You get to be
full,
VP.
full disclosure of who I am. You want to tell them our address now, too?
So anyway, this is a cask strength whiskey. So it's a higher alcohol percent by volume. So when you try it, you can get an experience from that, and then you can add water, and it'll open up quite a bit too. Not that you can't do that with regular percent whiskeys too, which would be like 46% and below-ish. But I think you get a much more impactful flavor difference when it's a higher alcohol by volume like this one is.
So yeah, Jules of Scotland, Lombard. This is actually a brand that's out there a little bit. So you will find bottlings from the Jules of Scotland out there.
You said you hadn't seen it before.
I've heard of them. I haven't seen it. So
You said you hadn't heard of it. The last subscriber just kicked off.
well, yeah, because we're having a domestic dispute during the video.
Maybe if we put in some violence, we'll get a subscriber.
I've been trying to cut down the length of my videos from like less than like it's kind of like aiming around 18 to 20 and trying to get it down to 10 to 12. This is gonna be like a 40-minute video.
Maybe it should be a podcast.
It pretty much is now. Joe Rogan, we're coming after you.
We're targeting your market.
Yes, I'm gonna have on,
Just talk.
Tim Jobs next week.
Tim Jobs.
Yeah.
Not a hobo down the street.
Could be. This might be more entertaining than most videos I do. So, anyway, so next is Chieftains. Chieftains is a fairly well-known independent bottler. This is Glentocher's. It's a Speyside, 15 years. As you can tell, probably from the bottle, it's much darker than the first two whiskeys we've shown. It's obviously sherry casked. Unchill filtered, natural color. I think all of these whiskeys are unchill filtered, natural color. This is the only one that we have, despite what somebody thinks, that is 46% alcohol by volume. There's some interesting things we've learned about this whiskey as we've gotten to know it, and we've been studying all these whiskeys. You can tell there's a little bit going. But I don't want to spoil any of it before the tasting. So
It's a really good one, though.
there you go.
Just throw that nugget in there.
So one way or another, we'll look forward to that.
The Jewel of Scotland, though, that one was my favorite.
So I will talk about this. Nope, I'm gonna go with this one. There we go. All right, so this is the first edition. This is an independent bottler that I've never heard of and never seen before, and actually, it's hard to find them online. But this is Blair Athol. Blair Athol is a fairly unique distillery. I would say, of all the whiskeys we have here, this one in particular probably has the most defining characteristic. It's a lot like the Imperial in terms of like, wow, that's not something you normally taste in a whiskey,
Yeah,
right?
that one was really, really good. A lot of really unique flavors, really unique, pleasant flavors. You know, not every combination you get is a winner.
For sure. So this is 54.7%, so again, cask strength. This is aged in a sherry cask, so you can see it's got a nice,
But in comparison, you can see this one is much darker. Just so you can see.
there you go. This is
They're
18 years
they're
old.
both sherry.
18 years old. I don't know if there's anything else necessarily to say about it, but Blarethol I think is going to be a really unique whiskey to try because Blarethol has I'll say kind of a confectionery, very sweet type of undertone to it that makes it's a little cakey, you know?
Yeah, and some of that, I mean, sherry too is naturally adds a little bit of like a hint of sweetness to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes for a really nice mix with what they naturally kind of already have going on.
But it's not overtly sweet, right?
No, it's not like if you pick up a Moscato sweet wine. It's like
right.
it's just like hints of those flavors.
Okay, and then there you go. This one actually isn't cask strength, as I noticed. It's only 50%, but
so this is another one that I picked up in California, and this is an aged 19-year-old, the old malt cask, and then this is also distilled at Blarethol though. So it's going to be interesting because both of these whiskeys are distilled at Blarethol. This and the first editions, the last one we just looked at, but they're from different independent bottlers. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see for you how they differ back and forth. This is probably
don't spoil anything.
the most unique whiskey I've ever tasted, and I'll just leave it at that.
So I'm going to ask you a question. When you compare these two whiskeys, as we've tried them both, when you first tried them, did you think that you would notice a substantial difference?
No,
I mean, they're only a year apart. This is a 19-year. This is an 18-year.
I thought they would be very similar because their age was close together and they were from the same distiller.
So
Completely different whiskeys,
right.
though.
But
Completely.
can you tell they're from the same distillery?
I would say so. I'd say there's a level of refinement there that you can kind of pick out that they're like brother and sister.
Sure.
Just
But
the
they-
brother
but
and
the-
sister like
Yes.
look very different.
One went to Harvard. The other one went to, Oakland University.
Yeah.
I can't say that. My sister went to Oakland. McCall.
One of them didn't go to school.
One of them got their GED. Not that there's anything wrong with a GED.
You can't say this kind of stuff. You're gonna get haters. Someone's gonna be like, "Well, I got my GED, but everything in it's gonna be spelled wrong." And they're like, but
I'm pretty sure we're not targeting that market for our videos. I'll lose those subscribers.
Like 5 o'clock off the bottom shelf.
All right. So anyway, this is going to be a very exciting tasting. One thing that we noticed when we were talking about independent bottlers is that our audience didn't really know independent bottlers. They didn't understand what it meant to be an independent bottler.
Now you do.
And again, we think that this tasting will kind of will show a pretty good range of what you can expect in getting some whiskeys that are the same from different independent bottlers, from different casks, different ages. It's always interesting because when you get to try a few, you will know that there are a lot of inconsistencies. Things change. So you can get one barrel and one cask, one variant from a distiller, and then get another cask and it's completely different, even if it's the same year or if it's a year apart like these two. So I think this tasting is going to do a great job of articulating that and introducing some fantastic independent bottlers, maybe some not so fantastic independent bottlers. We'll have to see.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Stay next time. KCM.
KCM J.
So thank you for joining, and in the next video we'll try and make it less than an hour long thing. I guess while we're clinking glasses and making it longer, any last thoughts on your... Oh, you didn't put any water in it. We didn't put any water in it. Well, let's do that and do a little...
Yeah.
Just when you thought the video was over.
Da da da, plot twist.
I think this might be one of my favorite bottles of whiskey I've had.
Really?
in the house.
I mean, I really like peated whiskey, so this one is really good for me. But I still like peated stuff better.
Okay. But let's think of it from an objective standpoint.
For what it is, though, for a non-peated whiskey, this is probably...
You sounded pretty racist. For what it is. A non-peated
racist? It's a whiskey! Now we're bringing in racism. We're insulting people who have chosen different education paths.
Alright, why don't you talk about the whiskey? Why don't you talk about the whiskey and tell us what you think?
I think it's a really phenomenal whiskey, and for a non-peated whiskey, it's one of my favorite whiskeys I think that I've tasted that isn't peated.
I think this whiskey is absolutely phenomenal. It does give Old Pulteney a run for its money.
It does.
Because it has a lot of those same characteristics. It's very refreshing and it does have a little, it's not as briny as Pulteney, but it...
No, but it is more on the fruity end.
And you know
they're
what's
definitely
funny?
like cousins.
So as we talk about this, one of the things that I think about when I look or think about I sure hope this is still rolling, because if this is
then we're gonna do it all again. It's gonna be so inorganic, like it's gonna be so rehearsed.
Yeah, rehearsed, because that's anything like what we do. It makes me think about, one of the saddest things is that this distillery will never exist again, right? And then you think about it and you go, well, when you drink this whiskey, this isn't something that should die.
No, you
especially when you have
this again and again.
Yeah, when you have other whiskeys out there that.
Now we're throwing an animal here. Gosh, the most offensive video on YouTube.
2020.
Trending animal.
Oh my
abuse,
God, that would be
racism,
fantastic.
so-
Yeah, but the thing is, people aren't patient enough. It's over.
They're never gonna. Get
It's
this
over
right
1
now.
minute.
Yeah.
So.
We'll have
yeah.
to just edit it down. We'll edit you out completely.
Best video.
Oh.
Yeah, so
It really isn't something that should die. This is a really.
It's
high
amazing.
quality.
Isn't
As
it
we're
amazing?
sipping it too, like the flavor kind of compiles and
Yeah.
additional flavors come out from what's lingering on your tongue. The first sip to now feels so different. It feels so much more open, and you really can't tell anymore that it is slightly oxidized. It's a really phenomenal whiskey.
Yes. So, R.I.P. Imperial Distillery, even though you were shut down many, many years ago, but you will be missed in the whiskey community. Okay.
Very nice.
That's it. Thank you for joining, and next time we will talk about Kirkland Scotch.
Ooh.
This is where we do like a pan cut or like a...
You won't let me edit the video, so we can't do
no,
it.
Yeah, you're right.
This is it. This is what you get.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to, because like you're kind of in the way.
Oh
so,
my
yeah,
gosh.
you're